Welcome to this video. My name is Rob Keating and I want to talk you through the solution to the business transformation problem. This is a pioneering reinvention process that will allow your company to change, transform, it will engage your staff, it will ignite intellectual curiosity. Eventually, it will help your company reinvent what it does. Now that is a very, very challenging process, and that's kind of the secret of the whole thing. The fact it is so hard, it creates this constructive dissatisfaction. It pushes on what the business can't do and helps you to become more creative and helps you to, one of my favorite expressions is to see the same land through 100 pair of eyes. And all these little things fit together to help your business become something more. So here I'm just going to talk you through the solution to the transformation problem. This is the 70-80% thing you'll hear about online, which so far there isn't yet a solution. There's consultancies talking to you about it, there's change management, there's lots of different things. Reinvention is the answer here. So let's jump straight into the problem here. What we're saying here is there is a business change failure rate of 80% of business change programs fail. Key factors include poor communication, lack of purpose, organizational politics, and lack of user buy-in. We're saying there's a lack of corporate innovation. Now, this line from McKinsey here, we're saying if you were to design something to be as hostile to innovation as possible, you'd end up with what most large corporates are today. That is, the companies themselves, the organizations themselves, how they're structured and the way they are, they stop innovations themselves. They stop the companies because of the way that they are. So here I'm talking about the ability to transform. I'm saying there is yet to be a viable solution to transformation that doesn't cross over to traditional project or program management. So traditionally, what happens is companies and consultancies, they identify and they deliver. Now in this context with a reinvention, we're saying you don't know. We're saying there is so much more to the company than anyone mind can understand, and that's what we're here to find. That's what we're going to understand. So what are we saying the cost of these failed transformations are? Are companies failing to innovate and failing to reinvent what they're doing? Well, first of all, Bain recommends companies spend 20% of their budget on the future business. Here I've written Bain Consulting, their Engine 2 program, recommend budgeting 20% of the entire budget on the future business. That is to stop the business ultimately failing to keep going. Here I'm saying there's a challenge with controlling versus creativity. Forcing and controlling outcomes in order to deliver your objectives will stifle creativity. And ultimately, your company will fail. Companies that can't respond to things and make things happen get stuck in their ways and fail. So what are we saying the root of the problem is? How did you, Mr. Rob Keating, actually solve this? Here we're saying traditional business change and transformation is treated as a forward problem. Again, that's identifying and delivering. We try to decide on the future and then force that to happen. Companies set out plans, and as a change unfolds, more is discovered. That 100% delivery in the first 6 months is suddenly the 70% as you found more as the project unfolded. In the words of Mike Tyson, taken from The History of Strategy by Lawrence Friedman, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, meaning they don't know what they're up against, and neither does your company, because you discover more as you go. So in one sentence, what are we saying the solution is? We're saying transformation is an inverse problem. Business change fails because we're trying to control outcomes. Now in this context, we're saying you've got to think like a detective solving a crime, and your company is the crime scene. We're saying there are ways of identifying underlying value, new ways of doing things, more creativity. And what you find is there are patterns of behaviour in your business. And these patterns of behaviour make your company predictable. So when you try to transform or innovate something or do something going forwards, then it's those patterns of behaviour which end up being the same thing and nothing really changes. So it's got to be treated as a backwards problem. As we're saying, we know there's something more, but we can't quite put our finger on it. So I'm asking myself, what has allowed this to happen? How has this actually become a thing? And I think it's because of this, because we have something called single-minded systems. Now, a single-minded system is something that allows the world to function. So it's a way of us understanding what's going on in front of us without having these years of experience and this depth of knowledge and all this realm of academia or whatever you want to call it. So I'm saying here, grades at school. Grades A to C. 15 to 20 years of education boils down to a grade A to C or a 1 to 3. It's something we can all understand. You got an A, you got a D. We know what that means. Vote red, vote blue. Millions of moving parts in democracy come down to simply vote red or vote blue. And the big one here, financial statements. Thousands of people and billions of transactions are summarised with formulas and numbers. We take all these things and put them into formulas and put them into numbers, and then we say, oh, we understand what's going on because we have numbers. Look at the formulas. Now, if you've ever been to a sports venue or a festival or something with 10 or 20,000 people, your mind cannot understand what 20,000 people are doing. This is why we have accountants. This is why we have numbers to say, well, look what's happened over there and look what's happened over here. That's what accounting means, to be accountable. Now, we've got some more examples here, some more practical ones here. Driving a car, an internal combustion engine has thousands of moving parts, and we have 3 pedals, a gear stick and a wheel. Using an iPhone, I'm sure there are some people which could tell you everything about how an iPhone works, the ins and outs, the back and the front of it. But here we're saying it's a simple user interface and easy to understand. The third example here is the postal service. Letters go out of the letterbox and in through your door. Now, again, there's somebody that could explain all of that, but the way we use it is you simply post a letter, you get one back. It's a way for us to interact with what is going on. So behind this single-minded system, what is the stuff we're talking about? What are we actually saying is happening here and is going on? Now here, I'm talking about the collective self. Now the collective self is the shared identity you have with other people. This could be your family, your hometown, your favourite sports team, your nationality, your neighbourhood, the company you work in, the community, something, just a group of people. But we're saying because of this single-minded system, because you go and post a letter, somebody else knows what to do with that letter and they have their single-minded system to use for the whole system to function together. Now here I've got some little drawings that I threw together on Sunday morning at about 3 a.m. And I'm saying here, in a group of 4 people, you have 11 relationships. So there's 6 groups of 2, that's all the arrows in the middle. There's 4 groups of 3, the arrows on the outside. Now every time you add somebody to that group of people, the number of potential outcomes, the bonds, almost doubles. So 5 people, 26, 6 people, 57. By the time you get to 10 people, there's 1,013 different combinations of relationships or different bonds, which could potentially be different outcomes for your business. 15 people, 32,000, 20 people, 1 million. And by the time you get to 30 people, that's 1 billion different combinations of outcomes and different relationships and things going on. So when we're talking about a single-minded system, we're talking about an almost infinite world of information that your mind can't reconcile with. There is so much going on that it's almost inconceivable. So we want to try to work in that space. So the best example of working in that space, let me first of all give you this single-minded system here again, the most beautiful math equation, Euler's identity. Now I could talk you through this equation, which I will in a second, and your mind can follow it. It's a single-minded system. So this math equation has been compared to a Shakespearean sonnet. Now the letters E, I and pi are all references to numbers. So E is 2.17, I is technically a number, it's the square root of -1, and pi is 3.14, it's only a number. Pi is the more common one. We use this because it's a reference to the circumference of a circle to the diameter. So if you've got a cell, an eyeball, a vein, an engineering component, or a solar system, 3.14 is that magic number from the diameter to the circumference. It's why we have it. So I could talk you through this equation here, e to the power of I pi plus 1 equals 0. Now that fits together, that works. Nobody on planet Earth can explain how that works. Nobody understands it. Nobody can fully reconcile it. Those examples I gave to you of driving a car, an iPhone, the postal service, we understand how that works. We put that together so we could use it, but nobody knows what's going on behind the scenes here. And that's the space we have to work in. Okay, Rob, so how do you work in that space of the stuff you can't see, but something pops out and then you've got something brand new within your organisation you didn't see before? This is by far the best way to describe what I'm talking about here. This is a quote from Steve Jobs about these concepts. And if we look at the line halfway down in the yellow, it says there are about 5,000 of these concepts you need to fit together to get what you want. And every day you discover something new. There's a new problem or a new opportunity to fit these things together differently. It's the process that's the magic. Now, this is what's going on here. There's all these little things in your organization, in your sales, marketing, leadership, your experience, just so many different things. And once you start to pull and push and twist and fabricate and find different ways to put them together, that's what they do. And you work through all this stuff you can't see, then suddenly you've got something in front of you and you're just thinking, how did I come up with that? Now, as an example, here I'm presenting to you the business transformation solution, something that all the companies, I believe, can benefit from. This started as me downloading pictures and putting it onto a social media website. Just that was it. Download, upload, hashtags, but just going through this process, just relentlessly pushing on what I was trying to achieve. I've got an Instagram repost account to the solution to the transformation problem. Now, obviously, this solution I'm presenting you today helps you a lot more than some social media account with pictures on. And that is the power of this process, because you're pulling just so many things and they just fit together in ways you can't imagine, and things pop out. That's how the process works, and this is what you can do in your company. And if you push hard enough, you will reinvent what you do. If you've seen this movie here, the story of McDonald's, the founder, how McDonald's started and became what it was today, there's a turning point in the movie where the burger business is thriving and it's busy, and this guy on the right hand side comes along and wonders why the business isn't profitable. Now in the movie, the business pivots. I think the line is something like, "You're not in the burger business, you're in the real estate business." Now McDonald's actually makes most of their money from the real estate, not from the burgers itself. So these little things, when you put them all together and reflect upon what you're doing, can change a business quite dramatically. This is obviously quite an extreme example, and I'm sure it's going to be more than one conversation before you end up with a company the size of McDonald's. But these concepts, they work in very, very funny ways. If you're trying to express something, or trying to do something, or trying to get something to say, I want to kind of work on this, but I can't quite get it, you will love this process. And here on the left hand side I have this screenshot from this YouTube channel that I follow called Soft White Underbelly. It's from this guy based out in LA, and he's trying to show the problems in America. He's trying to lift the lid on the optimism, the eccentricism of LA and whatever it is, and say, look, we've got some real problems here. And so he interviews people from Skid Row, the homeless people, the pimps, the prostitutes, the drug dealers, people and their life stories, and it's really powerful stuff. And all he does is he just takes them to a studio and he talks to them. And I've just thinking to myself, I've got something I want to express. I've got my story that I want to tell, and that is extraordinary. Now, if I copy that, it's just going to be a knockoff. It's going to be a copy. So how can I express that? And it's taken some time, but now I have something here that I want to express myself, which is kind of my own little version of that. So I've got this social media account here that says this page is about trauma. Each colourful square represents a day I lost not having access to my sense of self. 34 years, 12,409 posts to go. So you can take something over there and you can twist it and make it your own in a way that works, but it's not copying, and it's you building your own brand. It's you building your own business. So these concepts can just be anything. They can be just the way somebody puts furniture together, or a piece of writing, or the way an athlete does something. It can be anything, and they can become something else. And that explains why the process can be so challenging, because it stretches your imagination. This really is a process of ingenuity, which is taking that imagination and making it into something physical you can use, which is where the tension comes into it, because you have to push back on things. Now, a good example might be if when I was trying to come up with this process, I wanted something that I cared about, something that I believed in. So I said to myself, what do I care about? Well, strategy, boardroom, organising things, that's the stuff. I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. I like problem solving. And at the same time, travel, adventure, doing something different, a bit of discovery. I enjoy that stuff too. Now, how can I build something and do something where I'm pushing on those two things at the same time? Now, the reinvention is self-discovery. Now, in this context here, Marcel Proust is a French novelist. He wrote a very famous novel called In Search of Lost Time, and there's a number of quotes about self-discovery and about understanding who you are. And the quote here in question is, the true voyage is not to travel through 100 different lands with the same pair of eyes, but to see the same land through 100 different pair of eyes. Now, seeing the same land through 100 different pair of eyes, to me, is a fantastic strategy. It also encompasses travel and adventure. So this is, again, is a fantastic example of reinvention, how you can take two things and make it something else, which actually works for you. Now, what I do want to throw into this talk here is deep work. Deep work is this idea of achieving deep work means to spend uninterrupted time with complete focus on a task in hand. And what I'm saying here is great creative minds think like artists, but work like accountants. So these little things you're playing with, okay, they're little creative concepts, but you can account for them. Once they become something else, they become valuable. They become part of your business, part of your brand, part of your creativity, part of your imagination, ingenuity, whatever you want to call it. And it allows for people to do great work because it exists beyond what you can see and helps you interact with your collective, your company, charity, sports team, whatever it is, doesn't matter. All these things forge together to become something that right now you can't see. Now here, what I'm saying is happening is your organisation is becoming fearless because you realise through intellectual curiosity, through ingenuity, through coming up with things, you're actually making the business better in every single way, and people are being engaged in their work. So here I'm saying psychological safety from a fearless organisation is making the environment safe for open communication about challenges, concerns and opportunities. It's one of the most important leadership responsibilities in the 21st century. And once you see these concepts working together, if you're anything like me, you'll want to know more. You want to ask people, what would you do if this was your company? How would you do it? And it might not be the right answer. It might not fit right now. But once you start working on this process, things map back around and things start to make sense. When in the beginning they didn't. And the more of these concepts you put together, the more you can come up with and the more extraordinary I think it can be. Now I want to drop into this talk here this idea of a self-transformation. Now self-transformation is a personal psychological change. It's changing your modus operandi, your operating mode, you as a human being. And I just want to run through these lines here. I'm saying a self-transformation is when who we become no longer resembles who we were. It's the process by which we expand our identity beyond the constricted image. We have a core change, a remapping of the internal psychological territory that occupies who we are. With that mapping, we can find new skills, insights, and ways of being. It gives us a new map of ourselves. Self-transformation is a pilgrimage, a journey towards the sacred. So how on earth do you do that in a company? How do you do that in a business? Because that sounds pretty deep. That sounds pretty personal. So how can you do that as a leader of an organization? So what we're trying to do here is build from your first principles. Now, first principles thinking is one of the best ways to reverse engineer complicated problems and unleash creative possibilities, sometimes called reasoning from first principles. The idea is to break complicated problems into basic elements and reassemble them from the ground up. It's one of the best ways to learn to think for yourself, unlock creative potential, and move from linear to non-linear results. This approach was used by the philosopher Aristotle and is now used by Elon Musk and Charlie Munger. It allows them to cut through the fog of shoddy reasoning and inadequate analogies to see opportunities that others miss. So a good example would be Elon Musk and solving the battery problem. He figures out that batteries can be made cheaper, electric batteries can be made more affordable, and then from there he can build Tesla from that. Once you find out what your company can do that other companies can't, and you overcome your almost Achilles heel, you have this foundation for true knowledge to build upon. Everything becomes a reference because you know who the business is and what it can do, where it can actually go. You can think through things in a different kind of way. Now, one of the best examples I've seen of not an engineering company, but another company that's actually done this is this company here. This is a company called Deckers, a retail company. They make the footwear Ugg boots. This is a company I worked in about 6 years ago. And this little passage is taken from the YouTube video, Careers at Deckers. And this is the CEO here, Dave Powers. And here he's saying, we live by a core set of beliefs that drives our actions. Our values challenge people to be kind, honest, bold, open and courageous every day, to be their best selves and bring out the best in others while leaving their egos at the door. Now, working in this company, that is exactly what the business was like. The company understood itself. People in the company understood how they should be behaving, what they should be doing, what they should be working on, how they should be treating each other, and it created this space for people to do great work. Now, this company went in the mid-1990s. They bought Uggs, I think it's $15 million. And in 2010 they went past 1 billion, so 15 to 1 billion. And I see a perfect correlation between who the business was and how they actually got there. Now, if you go back on this channel, you'll see a video about the world's first business transformation infrastructure. Now, if you'd asked me about this process I'm talking to you today about, I would have said this process is a map of your reality that works like an accounting system for change. Now, that makes no sense. That doesn't, well, Rob, what does that mean? How do we do? Well, it's a map of your reality. Yeah, but what do we do? That's why these concepts are so important, because it explains what on earth I'm talking about. Reinvention, the answer to the business transformation problem, your company relentlessly changing who it is, what it does, how things work, and fitting it all together differently. Now, something I do want to really emphasize in this process is rebel talent. Now, this is the work of Francesca Gino, rebel talent, how people with bad attitudes and outcasts are masters of innovation. From her book cover here, rebels have a bad reputation. We think of them as troublemakers, outcast contrarians, those colleagues, friends and family members who complicate seeming straightforward decisions, create chaos and disagree with everyone else in agreement. But in truth, rebels are those among us who change the world for the better with their unconventional outlooks. Instead of clinging to what safe is familiar and falling back on routines and traditions, rebels defy the status quo. They are masters of innovation and reinvention and have a lot to teach us. Now, I think traditionally, business change and transformation, we think of ourselves as the government, as the policymakers, as this is what we're doing, this is where we're going. Now, if you want this process to succeed, you've got to get on the other side of the fence here. You are the rebel. You are the rioters. You are the person pushing back on something. You are not the policymakers. And I think this is why change and transformation fails, because we think we are the policymakers. This is what we're going to do. It's not going to work. You've got to get on the other side of the fence. You are the rioters. You are the person pushing back on something. And that's what allows your reinvention to actually take place and to actually succeed. Now, the first passage in the book here is, it's not rebels that make trouble, but trouble that makes rebels. Now, getting on the other side of the fence and rioting and pushing back on something allows this change to take place. And it's that behaviour which changes your organisation, because you see how these concepts fit together and you think differently about things and you map and model and do things which you never would have done without that something to push on. So you've really got to get away from this idea of we're the policymakers, we know what's going to happen tomorrow, because we don't. We really, really don't. And to jump into the next slide here, we're saying this is an inverse problem. This is the problem we're facing. We're saying it's a forward problem, that doesn't work. The answer is actually it's an inverse problem. It's a scenario that can't be forecasted into. Now, what are the examples here? Now, I've already mentioned this, so that you're a detective solving the crime. Our business can be better. How do we do that? How do we figure this out? What's going on right now that our minds can't reconcile with? The stock market is a good example. No matter how much maths or whatever we use, we don't know what's going to happen in the stock market tomorrow. And the last one is self-discovery. Now, I've bring self-discovery into the conversation because over the years, I've learned that some companies really know who they are. Companies just have this internal identity. We call it culture. I don't really like to use that word. I prefer human behaviour. But the examples here I've taken from the website /leadership are Aerie, who are owned by American Eagle. They're a women's retail company, and this company's revenue has been absolutely soaring, and it's my opinion they know what they're doing, where they're going. They have this invisible leadership, this environmental force. Same with Spirax Sarko. This video, I think, is from 2014, since the CEO, Nick Anderson, took over. He gives this talk and you just get a sense of he knows who the business is, what it stands for, where it's going. And Deckers, again, the company I just mentioned, they're the same. Now, these companies, they have this invisible leadership. They have this environmental force. They know who they are and they know where they're going. And I want to bring into the conversation here Simon Sinek and his famous talk, Start With Why. Hire people who believe what you believe and want to be a part of what you do. Once you go through this reinvention process, you will better understand who your company is, where it's going, what it stands for, what people shouldn't be doing, and how it all fits together. And I'm saying in this context, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Now, one of the central things to our own human behaviour, what we actually do, is the law of belief. Now, this is the ABC of behaviour change theories, 83 theories on behaviour change, and the law of efficacy. The law of belief contributed to over 25% of all of the 83 theories on the book. It's the most contributed to theory on behaviour change theory in the book, and it is a very good book. There are 83 different theories, and this one was the absolute central of all of them. So if you change this belief of your organisation, if you change what you see in front of you, when you work through these concepts and things suddenly pop out, then you've got something you haven't seen before, your belief of your organisation will change. Now, here I've written stress testing your collective. Now, what I'm trying to explain here is you push here and something will pop out the other side. Now, if you've had this experience, you'll know exactly what it is I'm talking about. If you've been to an exhibition, a festival, a wedding, or dealt with a rental company or a service provider, and you've complained about something, or you've found a new way of doing something, and then suddenly you go back to the company and they've got a legal notice up, or they've got something's changed on their website, or something is different because of what you did, you'll know exactly what I mean by push here and something will pop out. Because that's how it works. When you speak to a manager or you complain about something or something, you put something right and they do something, that's you interacting with your collective. That's you changing something which it wasn't your decision, but it's because of how you see things, things are now different. Now, if you haven't had this experience, I've drawn a little map here saying if you push here, say in logistics, you'll find something starts to make sense and pops out over here in marketing. That's the green arrows and the blue arrows. And I'm saying here it works because of these invisible bonds. It works because of the collective self, because of these concepts. It's the invisible bonds your mind can't see and the things we can't actually account for. Now, I think the reason this works is because of something called the integrated self. The integrated self is simply individuals living in harmony with their reality. It's people who can process their own emotions. It's people who are emotionally connected. And there's these 7 functions which can get quite complicated. But again, it's about what's going on in the individual's internal world and how they function as a human because of it. And this, again, you can find this on the website. I think this is the /leadership page again. Emotional connectedness, broad vigilance, utilization of felt feedback, unconscious processing, integration of negative experience, extended resilience, extended trust. I won't go into too many details because we'll be here all day. Now, what I do want to drop into this conversation is the Encyclopedia of Human Behaviour. I think what we're talking about here is changing your behaviour, changing your understanding, changing how you interact with your company based on how things can become different. So I've pulled out a few here. Human behaviours, I'll just skim them off the top here. Marital dysfunction, social anxiety, behavioural analysis, consumer psychology, decision making, violence. And that space is where I want you to get into. So if we take the first one here, marital dysfunction. So if I say, for example, I'm going out for a run. Now, going out for a run, that can be interpreted as a negative. He went out for a run and didn't tell me. Then that can also be interpreted as a positive. He went out for a run, he didn't tell me. That's a great thing. That's the space you got to work in. How something can be looked at in sets of different eyes. It can be a positive or a negative, and that's how these concepts kind of work. There are things right now you can't reconcile with, but we're going to find. We're going to find them in your organization. Now, speaking of organizations, a company I like to think of is Hotel Chocolate. The company was started in 2004. They've now just passed 164 million in revenue in over 18 years, and the company is just relentless in innovation. The CEO and the founder, Angus here, believes chocolate should be eaten every single day. Now, this is just embedded into who the company is. And good luck to anyone trying to innovate that company. They, in my opinion, know who they are, where they're going. Strong brand, strong product, strong leadership, strong everything. So again, over a 10 or 20 year period, can you beat them? Yes. But now they just have this integrated self. They know who they are, where they're going, and they're just an extraordinary company. Now, how do you actually explain this stuff I'm talking about? How do you explain how these concepts actually work and this integrated self and companies as self-discovery and how it all fits together differently? And I think this here is how you explain it. Now, this is the work of Dr. Daniel Siegel from his book, The Developing Mind. And here he has the triangle of human experience. Now, if you look at the triangle here, he's saying our human experience is based on our minds, our relationships, and our embodied brain, the outside of the triangle here. All human experience is a transfer of energy and information. So as you watch this video, you are transferring energy and information from inside of who you are, you're receiving it, you're thinking about something, you're asking questions back, and that's all our human experiences really are. And I think because this process is so challenging, because these concepts can become so difficult, what happens is you actually end up changing your energy and information for how you see things. And that's how your reinvention takes place. That's how you can get such extraordinary results and how it can also be so challenging. And it's because our minds can't go that deep. We don't understand and we reference our feelings when things get too complicated for our minds. We just say, well, it doesn't feel right. I don't feel good about this. So we just move on from something because it's something that we can't explain. And that's very important in this reinvention process, because it can be challenging. So what are the first steps, Mr. Rob Keating? How do we actually do this? Now, absolute priority is you know there's more in your company. If you know there's more in your company, but you can't quite put your finger on it, you will love this process because things will quite literally pop up in front of your eyes that you hadn't quite seen before. This process, this is why it's a longer term process. This isn't a quick 3 or 6 month answer. You got to wait for the things to appear, and then you'll see the transformation take place. Second one, I've kind of already mentioned, you're thinking long term. This isn't a quick solution. This is your business reinventing and transforming and becoming something different. Number 3, you want to have a curious mind. Intellectual curiosity is vital in this process because there are so many ways for it to fit together. You have to be relentless in discovering different ways for your business to expand and grow and for you to see things differently. If you just need to know now, it's not going to work. You have to be very curious about how things can be different. Number 4 is you want a process to follow. This is actually a process. It's step by step, but the steps don't fit together in the beginning. It is a reinvention. Things map back around and things become more than you originally started with. Now, what I got to drop into this conversation here is the work of Clay Christensen and the Innovators Dilemma. If you don't know what this is, the Innovators Dilemma is quite simply how companies get innovated. He's saying here in the chart, the larger company is the blue line. It's the company which is focusing on short-term gains. They look for immediate success and they say, well, this is what we've been doing, so let's continue doing that. The innovator, the long-term thinker, is the orange line. It's the company that says, we're not going to do that, we're going to focus on something else. So this could be, say, traditional on-site computing versus cloud computing. Cloud computing was the long-term innovation, which has now disrupted on-site corporate IT systems and infrastructure. It's all in the cloud. Now, these concepts, what they do is they take your arrow and they make it into a sphere. And they make what you can see more expansive, and it gets wider and wider and wider, and eventually you knock into something and you say, look what's happening over here, that interests me, but you can't quite put it into where you're going. And that's how these concepts work. You have to find a way to channel it into what you're doing through some kind of a deliverable. It isn't what your business is doing or where your business is going, it's how your business can fit together differently, and that again is the challenge. But what you do is you pick up on it early, so you don't wait for things to cross, then you say, oh, we're done, we can't catch up, because you can't. When somebody innovates they've done the work already, they've got the groundwork to keep their business going, whereas you're still thinking, how on earth do we do this? You can't reinvent a company in a weekend. It is a long-term strategy we're doing here. What are the benefits here? To run down the list, you know who the company is and where it's going. It's quite self-explanatory. Intellectual curiosity, again, that in a company is awesome because people will do more, learn more, and people will become more. Employee engagement, process itself engages your employees because you'll want to understand what else can be done and how things can be different. You unlock creative potential through these concepts. You'll be able to hire creative, rebellious employees. Again, you're not the policymakers, you're the rioter. You're the person pushing back on something and saying, what can we actually do here? What can get done? And this can be quite a fun exercise because it gives you something to push on and something to really bring yourself to and really think about it. Now, the idea or the answer might not come up in a session, but it comes up a day or a week later and suddenly it's, here we are. And lastly, I'm saying product, service, solution development. That's kind of obvious. It's a reinvention, it's a transformation. Your company is going to get better at what it does through following this process. So in terms of delivery, there has to be some kind of a time span to say, is this actually possible? Can your company actually reinvent? And is there something more in the company that you can't see? Now, deep down, you know this already. You know if your company's got more. Again, if you can't properly map it together, you will love this process. Concepts, putting it together. I've written 3 to 12 months. Could be more, could be 15, it could be 4 months. I don't know, because every company will be different and the way people work with each other will be different. Some people will be open and collaborative and some people won't be, and your organisation has a way about it. People have short-term deadlines, and so nobody knows. But eventually your reinvention will pop out and you'll say, where did that come from? And I'll say, I don't know, these were your ideas, you're the experts in this field. Lastly, future, ongoing. I'd like to think that once you pick up this process, you'll be doing it forever because it will reinvent your company. And again, Bain recommend 20% of your resources, so 1 day a week. At a push, might be a bit much, but again, that's not fixed. It's up for you to kind of make up your mind. And lastly here, the last slide is I've written the infrastructure. Now this is a screenshot from my phone. These are my Apple Notes. As you can see here, I've currently got 6,293 of these notes on my phone. These go back to 2010. So when I say there's 5,000 things to fit together, I'm not exaggerating. But the results you can get are absolutely extraordinary. Instagram repost account to the solution to the business transformation problem, this pioneering reinvention process that can help all the companies. Now, I didn't set out and say that's what I'm going to do. That's what happened. That's what popped out. And the same will happen in your company. Your skills, experience, expertise, your mind will start identifying things that right now you can't see. And you'll say, this is what we have now. And that's how the process works. And that is just an example of just how it all fits together and really just showing you what it means to reinvent something. So if you want to know more or you've got any questions, just fire them my way. I'll take you through this, I'll talk you through this, and I'll change, transform, and reinvent what your company does.